Welcome everybody. I'm pleased to introduce to you Maarten Witteveen. Maarten Witteveen is a former student from Fontis. He graduated in 2012, and he graduated in what we call our Delta students, and that is a selection of students that we see as especially entrepreneurial. So it's not the highest grades, but it's the mentality they show. And we actually often see that students from this group start companies, do very innovative stuff. I think we have a very good example here, Maarten. This entrepreneurship has proven to be true. And the topic here we're going to talk about is grasping the future, bridging the virtual and the real. And this is really about literally grasping the future with this virtual hands you have made. I have seen them over time, sometimes in the F&R early prototypes. And one of the last things I heard is that you actually have customers such as NASA. I think how beautiful can it be if you love technology and this kind of things. But I think I would like to give the floor to you. And can you please take us along in what you are doing with Manus and maybe also a little bit the journey you made as an entrepreneur in this field?
Definitely. Yeah. So before I dive into a short history lesson, it's important to note that VR is already way older than the recent history of Manus. Like from the 60s, people have been developing on how to get people into a simulated environment. The metaverse term is also from the 60s. Like it's already been out there into the ether as to this is something we want for the future. So the history I'm going to talk about is from when I got into the market, and that's when Oculus, founded by Paul Malocki, brought out a new generation of VR, specifically dedicated towards the consumer market. And one of the things to note here is this person is in VR, but using a keyboard, sometimes using game controllers to navigate into these virtual spaces. And at that same time, Samsung also brought out its Gear VR, where you could put your mobile phone into a headset that would split the screen over two lenses, two eyes to get that depth perception in. And what is notable here is that the person in the marketing material is lifting up her hand, as in that will be able to be captured. But there's no hardware on the device. Like the Samsung Gear VR couldn't track hands. There was nothing for that. But still, the marketing people had something in their mind that to be in the virtual world, you want to be there presently, you want to be there with hands. And it makes sense because from the moment we are born, we start exploring the world with our hands, and we train all these skills and we train all these sorts of operations to be able to do very impressive or very innovative or very delicate operations. So it's a shame if that gets lost into the virtual world. So this is actually a first Kickstarter we tried out, because that was also a thing back then where you would go into the market by first releasing a Kickstarter video. And here you would be navigating through an Oculus scene, this game provided with a headset, and you would be able to walk around with your hands. Very rudimentary. There was no positional tracking back there, no way to tell where the hands are in space. It was all what we call relative positioning. So very early prototype, but it was enough for us to get into an accelerator. And an accelerator is specifically for very early companies, mostly when they're pre-seed funding or angel investment, to get up and running, to get off the ground. And High Tech Excel was very good for us. We were all just out of college, all out of university, and we had no idea how to start a company. And then for 3 months, there will be industry veterans, SMEs, people from the investment background, banking background, coaching and teaching us on how to build a company, how to make ourselves ready for that first angel investment, which we actually got. So at the end of this whole startup bootcamp period, this whole accelerator, we were able to attract 2 angel investors. And with that money, we set out, okay, let's just within 3 months go to the biggest entertainment expo that exists in the world, which was at that time the E3 in Los Angeles. And to give some perspective to that time, up on the top right corner, that was where we were at when we finished the startup bootcamp. It was just an Android device. There were some sensors. This was never going to survive a trade show, let alone an E3. So within 3 months, we went on the whole bottom line through those iterations. We built a demo. We built all the marketing material, the whole infrastructure, everything to set us up for that E3 event. And I still don't know how we did it. Probably just not sleeping, just 80 hours a week, 3 months straight to get to that point. And this is what you end up with then for any Dutch speaker that's in this waar gehakt wordt vallen Spaanders, where there's a lot of things happening, a lot of messes created. This was what our office looked like at the final day of the show prep, packing all the stuff and getting to Los Angeles. But we made it. We got there and we put down an amazing show. And I'm quickly gonna show this video. And I'm also gonna pause it real quick here to give a little background of what the state of the industry was at that point in time. Because this is the Gear VR, the Gear VR I was talking about, but didn't have any positional tracking. And to get us ready within a 3-month period to showcase hands moving in VR, we put colored socks onto the glove. So you see a green fluorescent and a blue fluorescent band, and that we would use to distinguish left and right. And then sort of on the size and the angle at which the hands were located, we would be able to tell where the hands were in relation to the headset. Really early days, really jank, but it worked. We showed hands moving in VR. We also had to put a fisheye lens onto the headset because the field of view of the normal camera wasn't that big and it didn't have any fisheye. So we glued a fisheye lens onto it. It was funny, but yeah, to be able to show it there and to see people enjoy VR in a way that they hadn't done before, like they were in VR shooting aliens with their hands, and all the press and yeah, just the attention that this generated really elevated us into the public space where we were making a name for ourselves and yeah, showcasing a new way to navigate these worlds. So we actually ended the show with selling 25 pairs just on the show floor and got like 300 pre-orders. Just packing it up in whatever we could find and shipping it out into the world. It was a shitty product. Like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it in any way. It was just a glove. I think the people that bought it just experimented, tried it on once, and then it was just collecting dust. But it was enough for us to get us some traction, get us some interest. And this is then the moment where we started working together with HTC. People know HTC from the phones, but they might also know it from the HTC Vive, the headset, that first integrated Valve Lighthouse tracking. Valve Lighthouse tracking is like a laser-guided system where it can do localization of elements in a world space. So actual tracking instead of just putting colored socks on hands. And this was actually the first time, and I don't know if everybody knows the term proprioception, but proprioception is the physiological trait where if you close your eyes, you can still feel where your limbs are just from your bodily presence. So when you're in VR and you just have floating hands, and those floating hands are exactly on the same space as the proprioception of your body tells where your hands are, that was the first realization that I had on we're doing something special here. This is working. This is something I hadn't experienced before. So we got this HTC set in. This is never seen the market. This was only the development kit for businesses that wanted to develop on it. And I still remember that it very clearly said, "Do not disassemble. Do not reverse engineer." But we had to take the casing off just to mount it to the hand, and we had to do some modifications we wanted to do to it. So we were actually on the trade show, people from HTC passing by, and then they told us, "You know what? We still have the newest controllers lying around." And for people that know the history, this is Paul Malachy from Oculus. He also tried it out on the show floor, and he loved it. He was completely sold onto, yeah, this is amazing for virtual reality. So yeah, we were able, this is 2016, to get hands into VR, have a whole demo around it. And back then, our business strategy was, we're going to build the first consumer VR glove. We're gonna build this out, we're gonna sell enough units to get traction up, and then we're gonna sell off to a company like Oculus, to Microsoft, Sony, whatever. We didn't really care. Just build it up in 3 years, sell it off, and then go do other things. It's also what it says on the background. It says the virtual reality to the consumer market. But then companies like NASA were picking up onto it. I can't shut down the music apparently of this video. 1 second. This is still the way he flicks the screw on the right. That's still a lot of fun to look back on it. So you are having companies like NASA picking up this glove. And I still remember meeting him at the GDC. And we were putting the headsets on, and it had this little game where you had to help this character move through a virtual world. And this person from NASA, he was just doing 10 minutes straight, this movement. And I kept looking at him, going like, okay, are you gonna, you can do this, you could catch the fireflies, and he was just 10 minutes straight doing this. And then I just left him and started talking to other people. And then he took off the headset and went, not bad. I was like, okay, but what did you want to test? I wanted to test repetition. Can you do this for 10 minutes straight? And it keeps doing the thing. Because apparently, up until that point, there wasn't a VR glove that could do that. Even the glove they had built themselves in their lab wasn't able to do that with those level of repetitions at that level of accuracy. So they wanted to use our gloves. And that sort of brought us to the point where there was no consumer interest happening. So we set this whole thing up, and there was no consumer interest going, but we had these customers like NASA and Lockheed Martin and Airbus and Boeing, and they were all showing interest. And I remember walking around one show floor and seeing this one, which I still think is funny. We do this not because it's easy, but because we thought it would be easy. So then in 2016, we did this pivot where we went, okay, the consumer market is just not catching up. We see this traction within business to business. This is going to be, we're in here for the long haul. And we need to keep building. We need to keep pushing. So let's just pivot completely towards business to business. And that was also, yeah, the whole mindset that had to change, because this was still in 2017 how VR was being pushed. You would have companies like Meta, like selling out the entire floor with this, with these headsets, which I still think is a great dystopian image in and of itself. And you would have Magic Leap that will bring out marketing videos, completely giving off the wrong message onto what could be achieved with this technology. And we're still nowhere, even today, near that adoption and near that technology. So we had to make a change there. And we knew that what we set up was completely designed for consumers. Like, make it as cheap as possible, produce it at a high volume, and just get it off the ground. So when we had to start marketing that as a business-to-business product, which we were completely not ready for, yeah, to be frankly, we were just embarrassed. We were embarrassed that we were selling this shitty glove that we had put together with putty and duct tape, and we were selling it off for $3,000 to NASA instead of the idea we had to make like a $250 glove that we could sell to consumers. And yeah, a lot of people know this quote from Reid Hoffman, but it is completely true. If you're not a bit embarrassed about the product you're selling out, you develop too long. Because they were interested, and there was nothing else on the market that would allow those companies to do that. And the picture you see on the right actually has a funny story to it, because a lot of those business-to-business customers were not only asking to get tracking accurately, but they also wanted haptics in there. And we didn't have a haptics product. So what you see here is actually just a picture of the finger tracking glove, and with paint we drew on wires and sort of painted in the vibration motors, and then just told them, yeah, we now have a haptics product. Do you want to buy it and sell those units as well? And then give us time to start actually developing it and bring it out. And we were shipping it in a few months later. Like we were have these pizza boxes just lined up, and we were selling it to whoever wanted it. And we don't have telemetry data back then of if it was actually used. But I think a lot of those products, again, just they bought it because the VR was a hype. They thought they needed it, and then it would end up in a cabinet because there wasn't really anything you could do with the product unless you would build it yourself. It wasn't integrated into any of the applications. It wasn't integrated into things like Autodesk VRED or the CAD software or Siemens Process Simulate or any of those programs. So you would have to build it yourself in Unity or Unreal, which was a really big hurdle for companies to take. And that also explains why then in 2017, you could see the VR hype sort of stalling. And not only on the consumer side, but also business to business side, we would just see that after the initial push of VR, a lot of that demand and a lot of that interest sort of waned. Which makes sense. You always have the hype cycle where there's a lot of interest and people just buy whatever there is to buy, and then reality sinks in and it sort of shows that there's still a very long way to go. And to keep the company afloat, we were very happy that another company from the Netherlands called Xsense was already very established within the motion capture market. And they, for the people that don't know Xsense, they are a company from Enschede, and they make inertial measurement unit suits. So suits a user can put on to get their whole body into a digitization, into a virtual space. And
20 years ago, we asked ourselves how long.
Yeah, let me just do a quick introduction before I dive into the video. And that actually allowed us to get into the motion capture market. And we didn't know that whole market was still demanding for gloves. We knew the market already existed for 25 years, and we thought we have no real business there. We make VR gloves, we make gloves to be into real-time data, not for recording or anything. But through that connection with Xsense and through talks we would have with industry veterans of the motion capture market, we realized that there was actually no solution for hands in that market, and that also there was a lot to gain to digitize human beings. And that, those products we sold back then, they were used in a lot of productions, and one of them is actually the Matrix 4. So we have Keanu Reeves and Carrie Moss wearing our product for a production for the Matrix 4.
20 years ago, we asked ourselves how long it would be before faces and bodies could be changed as easily as we change systems.
The audio is quite bad from my side, probably also for others.
So yeah, that's sorry.
The audio, I didn't really hear it from my side. Probably others had the same problem.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. Maybe can you explain a bit of what we saw?
Yeah. So Keanu Reeves, Carrie and Moss, the actors that are very known for the Matrix series, and they are now in motion capture stage. This is, well, in this case, not with Xsense, but with an optical camera system. And they are wearing our gloves that are fully motion tracked, fully motion captured. And then they take that animation data and then they can apply it to a 3D character. So here in this, just skipping through it, in this stage, you see all the movements there of, well, this is the photogrammetry part where they do the facial capture, they do the body capture, they do the hand capture. So the whole character is fully 3D captured, fully volumetrically captured, and then they can have a full digital avatar that they can put into any sort of scene and have that whole 3D experience with. And that wasn't possible before we launched a product in there. So even though we were in these big Hollywood productions and we were like doing good business, we're engineers. We can't sit still. So we said this is still not good enough. We want to go further. Like we're still on a technological level where we want to exceed, where we want to excel. So we actually went into a whole fundamental research into what are all the tracking technologies with which you could capture a hand. And then we landed on the technology that's used in our current flagship product, the MetaGloves. And that brings us to end of 2022, where we released this product. And this is the pivotal point in the history of Manus, where we went as an accessory to a VR headset, as an accessory to a motion capture stage. We went to the main driving force for capturing interaction. Because the technology that we incorporated into this product allows for millimeter precise tracking. And you can look up videos online, like after this presentation, but it really allows for this sort of fine grain transition of fingers. And that up until that point, there hasn't been a product, not with optical tracking, not with leap motion, not with any that could capture that sort of fidelity in any sort of condition, in any interaction with props, in any way, shape, or form that you could imagine, that it could deliver that level of tracking. And to show what artists were able to do with that, this still amazed me. This is a video like really after beginning of 2023, when we just had the product out, and just this level of fluidness of movement we hadn't seen up until that point. And it's still incredible to see.
And this is
And we
all
were
real
big.
time,
Oh, sorry?
This is all real time. There's no after editing.
No, this is all real-time applied.
Pretty good.
This is with the Accent suit, with the head-mounted camera from Faceware. And this is a solo artist. And that's also one of the things that has always amazed me most in this journey, is that there's a lot of solo producers, a lot of hobbyists that turned their passion into a profession, that especially also during the COVID period, we're just able to push out productions and do everything for the living room. They're a one-man band. So before, and this is actually a good story to also include. So before we brought our gloves to the market, those home producers and those home animators would have to frame by frame, keyframe by keyframe, animate those fingers. And that would take ages, because normally there's a whole VFX department that would do hand animations. But if you're a one-man band, you have to write the script, you have to do the recordings, you have to do the animation, you have to do the post-production, you have to do all that stuff. And then keyframing hands, that just doesn't work out. It's just way too time-consuming. So we have a lot of solo producers that really love our products, because, they wouldn't be able to do their work to that level, to that extent, without our product there. So that was all real time. A lot of people will have seen this in the news, that the Hollywood strike of last year, and that really hurt us. That really hurt us badly, because up until that point, we were doing 80% of our business in the entertainment market. We were doing some in the VR industry, some in the life sciences, some in robotics, but really the majority was in the Hollywood scene, like movie production. So this is one visual that sort of translates that really well. You would have the Hollywood strike, and all the actors and writers, they were well supported because they were all unionized by SAG-AFTRA. Their paycheck was still being paid. But the film crews were already struggling. But the VFX artists, they just had nothing. And that whole industry is still recovering. That's still not on the point where it was before the strikes. And if there's no VFX work being done, there's no gloves needed, there's no productions, and then, we're also somewhere in the bottom of that pool. So while everything was all sunshine and everything, we got to the top 2 floors of the Kennedy Tower in Eindhoven. I don't know who are all familiar with the city of Eindhoven, but right at the train station, you have the Kennedy Tower, which is, I still think, the best office location in the whole of Eindhoven, because you see the entire city and you're right there on the train station. And we had the top 2 floors of that building as well. And this is a term I learned during my Fontes years from some of my teachers, is to kill your darlings. When you're pressured for time and when you're pressured for resources, you have to see what you can cut and what you can say goodbye to without it hurting the overall project. And sometimes that also means in strategy, you have to kill your darlings. It just wasn't sustainable anymore. So we sadly had to say goodbye to those 2 floors, take our logo off to be a healthy company and to be able to see how we can transition and redefine what that business model should look like if the entertainment industry is falling behind. We're still in Eindhoven, but only on a mural. So if you ever pass through the train station and you see this mural on the tunnel there, that's the Manus glove, actually. So I thought that was a nice nod. So we're now back in Geldrop, where we have our factory and everybody sitting here. We had to also scale down the company, but we're now in a very healthy position again. And a healthy position again for growth, because now we're getting into the near future. After that whole history, we're getting into the near future. And I started this talk with that back in 2016, when you wanted to do something in VR, you had to build everything out yourself because no tools existed. But right now we're getting integrated with our top line product into programs like ICIDO, which is a tool that's being used by a lot of automotive companies, a lot of industry companies to do virtual digital twinning. And digital twinning is the element of where you have your CAD models on your PC for your engine, for your complete car, for your full assembly line. And you make a full functional digital twin where you can test all those elements. And you can do a full exploded view, you can do the full assembly step. And most importantly, you can also get the human factor element in there. So you can really test, if I'm putting together this part, can my hand still fit in between there to put this connector there? Or do I have to make that just a little bit bigger so that that hand size can fit there comfortably and safely? How long does a process step take? And does that fit between my automated line and my manual operator line? Like all those types of things, they can already pre-test, and that saves a lot of time in the whole engineering step, and it saves a lot of resources where you don't have to build out physical prototypes in order to test it. So after the inception in 2014, it takes 10 years to get to a point where you can get your product into such a level of integration and to get the market ready. So that's really where we prepared ourselves for the long haul. That was not a joke, where that was just necessary to build this out. But it's not just in the VR industry, because this is something, a research that was done by MIT, also published this year, where there was only one brain surgeon in the entire world that could do a specific brain surgery on infants. So they wanted to capture how he did that operation so that they could translate that to other surgeons across the world and learn from his really specific hand skill set. Or where we worked together with a French company to store the knowledge of how to do glass blowing and make glass sculptures and do all those really fine, intricate hand movements. And that is also a transition, which I'm going to talk about in the remainder of this topic, is the robotics market. It's one that I'm very enthusiastic about. And already in the beginning days of Manus, we would have companies that would buy our glove. This is again the very shitty DK1 that we put out in 2016, but where a company already built out a robotics hand and was able to hook that up to their robotics platform to do very rudimentary. You can see the gap between the user's hand and the robotics hand. It was really early days of VR gloves and robotics hands. And that really kicked off last year. we're very grateful for Elon Musk and Tesla to bring out the best marketing video that we never made. They bought they bought a few of our products, and we had no idea what they wanted to do with it. We knew they had the robotics platform, but we had no idea if they wanted to use it for that or for VR. Complete silence until this video landed, where they are doing supervised AI learning with our gloves. And that was the transitional moment where I was talking about, where first we were an accessory to a product. Here we are the driving force, because they want to capture hand movement. They want to capture what a human being is doing so that they can then translate that to a generic robotic AI platform. And there we are, the driving force into capturing that interaction. And they have a complete farm of operators. They have about 50 people, 24/7, using our gloves to capture how a human is picking up elements from a basket, how that robot is picking up battery cells, how it's ironing, how it's doing all these types of manual tasks that a human is doing, so that they can be translated to a general purpose robot. Really cool stuff. Also, Boston Dynamics is now one of our customers. I visited them in Boston. Also great to see what they are doing with the whole Atlas setup. And yeah, you can just see that there's a lot of interest and a lot of investments being made in the robotic space, which is very exciting. Also this TED talk that was done with our glove product on how to bring hand interaction and movement into the AI world. What I did a lot during my Fonti study was also do a lot of futurology, seeing trend lines, seeing where things are moving, and then making predictions. I think that's one of the things I like most about running a company, is thinking about strategy lines, is thinking about, okay, these elements are moving in the market. This is where the money is moving. This is where customers are moving. These players are coming up. What does that mean? If you draw that trend line out for 5-10 years, where are we at right then? And this is already a really old video, but I still encourage everybody to watch it. It's Humans Need Not Apply. And he talks about how generative AI and general purpose robots will replace human workforce. And still, in a lot of conversations, people put up the defensive arguments: if robots replace human beings, new jobs will arise. And he makes the analogy into just like better technology that replaced horses, that didn't emerge new jobs for those horses. They were just replaced, and it was really hard to find specific uses where horses could be applied. He argues that that same analogy will be true for humans. And it's one of those things where the genie is out of the bottle. It's not going back in there. This is a trend line that's going to happen. And it's all about how we create policy and what type of world do we want to see for ourselves, and how do we feel that that should be applied, and who should own those means of production, and how is that spread between us humans so that it doesn't just benefit one population more than it does others. And I think that is a topic that is not yet spoken about, at least in enough detail, that at which the rate of these developments are happening. So that's all happening within big institutes and big universities, where people like myself, who are just engineers, want to build cool stuff and bring out cool things. But like I said, once the genie is out of the bottle, it doesn't go back in. So that's also one of the MIT mottos, mens et manus, mens and hands. It's a driving force. It's always humans and the way we interact with the world, the way we practically apply ourselves with all the tools that are provided to us. And we provide a tool set into this world, which I hope is going to be picked up by a lot more industries, a lot more people, and make even more cool stuff towards the future. So with that, that was a quick history through VR and to the current history of Manus.
Okay, thank you, Manus. Manus, sorry, I'm totally Maarten. I think I found it a very inspiring and wonderful story. I'm impressed also by the career, the mixture of guts, bluff, but also really hard work and stamina that brought you here. I think that will be inspiring to a lot of people. I have some questions myself, but there are also some questions from the audience. I would like to ask first. So one is from Phil Brown. He asks, why was it so hard that this repetition of movement that this engineer from NASA was trying for 10 minutes, this repetition? What was so hard about it?
Yeah, because the sensor technology that was around at that time were either orientation sensors. So a lot of gloves that were on the market were all orientation sensor based. And the downside of IMUs is that they always drift.
Yeah.
It's really hard to compensate for that drift. So we actually took a sensor technology that was also used in the first power glove, which was a resistance-based bend sensor. And we combined that in a very smart way with an IMU sensor. So we really had that combination and that sensor fusion where we could compensate for the drift of the IMU with the data we would get back from the resistance sensor. And that was something that apparently up until that point, nobody had thought about, to combine those specific two sensor sets to benefit both and get to a better result.
Yeah. I hope that answers the question from Phil. If not, then I'll see it in the chat. Igor is very interested in your IP strategy, because this is, of course, you get competition, you do a lot of innovative stuff. How did you handle that?
That's a question we get a lot from investors as well. The downside of VR already existing from the 1960s is that a lot of smart people have already patented all the general ways that you want to hook up hands to VR. Like, that's not a novel thing. And also data gloves have existed from the 1980s till now. There's a whole graveyard of gloves behind us, and there will also be a whole graveyard of gloves ahead of us. Yeah, there isn't anything on the real core technology that you can patent. It's really highly specific patents, and especially because we took two sensor technologies that already existed, combining those was also not novel. But we did have full freedom to operate. So we were lucky enough that for the first 10 years, it's really been a really niche space where there was also only room for one player. And apparently we were enough first mover in that industry that everybody just followed our example, and we could set the price, we could set the technology, we could set all the integrations. So where we are at right now is that the market is so small that when we have an integration with iShadow or with Siemens, there is no interest for them to further that integration. So we try to get a lock-in with as many of the sort of content providers and the environments and whatever we can set, so that we are the first ones there and we can define anything there. We do have 2 patents on the new glove, but those are very, very highly specific. And I would say that if somebody from a technical skill, not to give anybody here encouragement, but if anybody from technical skills, they can find ways that you could get to the same operational level without using those patents. So they're more defensive and halting than they are, really in-depth fundamental patents. Yeah.
Am I correct if I summarize this, that you basically you stay ahead of the competition technologically, and that's your strategy? Not patenting, not defending, but staying ahead?
Yeah, being ahead of the competition and making sure that we are within the ecosystem are the first thing people think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. There was another question from Igor about how you incorporate responsible AI and other ethical societal issues. And I guess, Igor, this is due to the little part about why humans need not apply. Is that what caused this question for you, Igor?
Yeah, exactly. So, and by the way, Maarten, it's a really great talk. But yeah, so you raised the issues, and the discussion is there. But now I was just wondering, how does it apply to your own company and the business and your strategy? So are there any issues where you feel the friction, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, that is of course a good question. We always also on the defense, so we also provide our gloves to the defense agencies. We always set ourselves up where we provide a glove hardware product, and it's up to the companies what they want to do with it. We see ourselves in that regards as a Logitech company where a keyboard and mouse can be used by anybody and everybody. And we can't restrict who gets access to a keyboard and mouse. We can't restrict who gets access to a glove. In my personal time, I try to be involved into places where that discussion is being held, and we can have those types of talks about having robots pay taxes and having a basic income, and making sure that we at least intensify the efforts of policymakers to put this onto the agenda. But on the company level, that's really hard to do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think, Phil, maybe you can also just put your mic on, because you say I didn't really represent your question as you intended it. So maybe you can...
It's a bit different. I posed the first question that you said was Phil's.
Oh, sorry, I've mixed up.
Read it, and he said it was a great answer though.
Ah, I see. Yeah, I'm sorry. I mixed up two comments. Sorry. Then we have I don't know, Mr. Heine, about the question. Do you also see developments on the mixing of robotics as additional limbs, physical augmentation, and do you have some sources you like to share?
Yeah, that's actually a really nice one. This was in 2020. We were in this part of with BBC. They did an item on a Toyota use case, and in this Toyota use case, a person was in a fully tracked system, which also had upper arms, and everything was applied with haptics, and he could drive that towards a robotics platform. So full teleoperation. And then they also had a prototype there of where there were 2 additional arms, like you were Otto Octavius. And the gloves were set up towards, to drive those arms. So you would have additional lifting force while you were operating and using things. So yeah, copying what your hands are doing and applying that, or driving intent, where you're driving intent on, oh, I want to pick that up, so I'm moving my arm towards that, and I want to pick that up, and that the robotics arm with the whole AI system sort of guesses what your intent is going to be and pick that up. Yeah, that's definitely something we are with a few companies are looking into. Neuralink, for instance, also has our gloves to do all the testing and training for their Neuralink system. So you can also think into imagination, like towards the future, that the whole AI element is trained on our data, but towards your mind, and you would really be able to turn yourself into Otto Octavius. Like, that's not outlandish.
Can I ask you also, because I wonder, are you already including haptic feedback, or are you planning to do that?
Yeah, so the product you see here on the picture, so you have the light gray one and the dark gray one. The dark gray one is still based on the same flex sensor and IMU, and it has a vibration motor in there. The other one, the light gray one, that's the EMF, the electromagnetic field glove, and that currently only has the finger tracking version.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are working internally onto a haptics variant of that as well. We get a lot of requests to turn that into a haptics version.
And the other way around, if what you do for Tesla, for example, training the robot to take things from, I don't know, laundry baskets or picking glass or whatever, do you also measure the force that is applied by the human on the object?
Not currently integrated into the product, but we have an aftermarket solution which we sometimes provide to our customers, where they want to have pressure, they want to feel haptics, like incorporate it all into the product. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm asking this also because a half millimeter difference in my grip when I hold the glass, and when the surface of the hands is hard, will break the glass. So you have to know it's not only the position, but it's also the force that you need to incorporate to really, for example, train these robots, I guess.
Yeah, there's a whole growth process still. So they're now just capturing data, like categorized data.
Yeah.
But the next step is definitely to also incorporate pressure in there, so robot knows, oh, I detect an egg, I can only put this amount of force.
Yeah.
That
The
egg.
egg's a better example than the glass, I guess. Yeah.
And he's but that applies to everything. Yeah, robots will easily also pressurize through a glass. That's no problem. So
Yeah.
Other
There was another
question?
question from Igor, is asking about the feet. Are you also interested in capturing the feet movement, the feet position, force applied? And he says, for example, if you're in therapy or if you are playing soccer, a lot of things where this actually also would make interaction more realistic.
Yeah, so we get that question sometimes if that's also a product we would want to make. I think for now we're set on hands.
Yeah.
And there are some pressurized insoles. But as I see it, the market for pressurized insoles is even smaller than it is for hands. And the hands is already, at least at this point in time, pretty small. So yeah, who knows towards the future, once we have completely done hands to the full extent and there's nothing less, or the incremental gains are so small. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe we'll dive into
When
feet
you're
as well.
bored with the hands and want something else, you might try the feet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But probably also the technology for the hands is really mature, then it's easier to apply it to the feet as well.
Yeah, but I assume it wouldn't be so difficult. So, yeah, maybe I'm underestimating, but you know, if you go to the sports thing, you have these socks or shoes that with toes, right? Where you can almost walk for running, where actually, so if you would develop the same. The only thing is, of course, with the toes and whatever the grip and so on, it's more the positioning probably of the feet. I saw some posts on LinkedIn keeping a ball high, you know, like in VR. So maybe that's all different. No, anyway, you're the specialist. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is technically possible. Like there are companies that make pressurized insoles. They exist. But the use case of it is still very limited.
Okay.
So that's something the market needs to progress, and
Okay.
I don't even know if we're the company that needs to do it, but we'll see how that progresses.
Yeah. I have one question, which is, I think is from Nick. That's you, Nick. What would be your dream application with the gloves? Suppose you can solve all the technological issues and
so when we're really talking about bridging the gap between the virtual and the physical, one of the things, of course, that plays into it is human touch. So what I would really love is that we get to a point where if I shake your hand in a virtual space, it feels just as real. With all the articulation, with all the tracking, with all the haptics, with all the pressure, everything is in sync, is in unison. And that you can have remote relationships, you can have a child that's hospitalized and every night he can call with his parents and they can just have a full physical interaction while being in a virtual space. I think that if I have like my dream for the future, then it's that level that it's as close as touching. Yeah. That will be my dream. Yeah.
That would be the dot on the horizon. If you start incorporating haptic feedback, pressure sensing, etc., then yeah.
One thing you showed as well, being quickly out, you had the physical bar lined up with one of the footage that you showed.
Mm-hmm.
How often is that something that you use in practice, like with solutions for companies?
Actually, a lot, because we get a lot of questions on, can you put force feedback into the glove? And then I always have a discussion with the customer, because I then become, yeah, exactly. Where I become really defensive, where I say, I'm not a believer of force feedback.
Okay.
Because when I have a virtual object, and this is an unmovable object, and my hand moves towards it, I can have all the force feedback in my fingers. My hand is still passing through.
Yeah, exactly. You can't have weight or anything either.
No, and if I'm not localizing the wrist, if I'm not localizing the elbow, like localizing the shoulder, I can do any sort of this movement. And whenever I try on a product like the haptics, or indeed the open source glove that you just showed, it always falls flat when you move through an immovable object.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I mean, for robotics, the other way around, I think haptics have a very good use case.
Yeah.
Because of course, like you said, you need to have the feeling with holding something that's brittle, for instance. But yeah, the other way around, we still need to find a solution, I guess.
Yeah, so that's why I always say that, okay, if you have a table and a drill, just put a tracker on the table, put a tracker on the drill.
Yeah.
Have those two in the virtual space, and then you have the momentum, you have the impact, you have all those elements there. And it's way cheaper and way more comfortable than putting on a full haptics suit or force feedback onto a glove.
I guess it's a little bit the same with things like sim racing, for instance, where you have the physical object that actually gives you feedback.
Yeah, correct.
Interesting.
I also have a question. Would it also be possible to train muscle memory of the gloves? For example, you have this brain surgeon doing the brain surgery, and a lot of our very fine movements are based actually on muscle memory. You track the entire movement of the hands. Someone wears the gloves, and basically he's wearing the gloves and they make his fingers move for days or hours every week.
Yeah, that's still something we hope a paper will be released for any day now, because we have the assumption that you can train muscle memory in VR with articulated hand movement, but up until this day that has not been scientifically proven yet. So it's a gut feeling we have that you could train someone in VR and then put that person in front of the machine and he immediately knows how to do it. And he has also had the muscle memory to do it. But we're still waiting for a university to pick it up and turn that into a research project, so that we can then, with our sales team, point towards that paper and say, see, if you do this in VR, you train muscle memory and you can reduce your time spent on machine by this amount. Yeah.
Which actually need the VR if the gloves can also make your hands move. So you don't even need to see it, but the gloves replicate the movements of the surgeon or the car manufacturer.
Like that.
And they are making movements without you even thinking of it. Would that work? Because then you also have a disconnect between the thinking and the movement.
That is a bit the matrix right now, where you say, oh, you have a pre-trained person and you're then applying it like reverse. That's an interesting notion. No idea.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. It's a good question. I like it. I like that line of thinking. Yeah.
I still have one question about the haptic feedback. You gave the example, for example, of the brain surgeon, doing brain surgery in small babies.
Yeah.
And only capturing the position of the hand of the surgeon tells you so much, but in reality, the surgeon will also feel resistance of tissue. And that is very important to learn when and how the surgeon is doing certain things. So how can you do that without at least measuring the force that's applied? And when you want to train people or learn people, maybe you still have to do something with haptic feedback to make people aware of these moments.
True. This was mostly because it was also recorded on a robot dummy of the doll. So it was more on where he would make his decisions and where he would do the starting point and which instruments and how he would maneuver those and what the differences are between doing it on an adult skull versus on an infant skull. Like that was more of what was being captured in that specific paper. That being said, we are working with 2 universities at the moment on the pressurized and how to detect different tissue layers and tissue strengths and how to apply that with measuring how much pressure you are putting on which part of the incision knife or the tool that's being used. Yeah, no, completely true.
Clear, thank you. We're nearing the end of this hour. Are there any more questions from people still online? If there are no more questions, Maarten, I want to thank you for a very...
I got one thing.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Well, not necessarily question, but to add a little bit onto that last part. If you compare this with motion capturing to something like volumetric video, you know, like what Dutch Horse Media is doing with the 360 degree, I guess that's where the biggest advantage lies, doesn't it? Where you can actually sense what someone is doing with the hand and the pressures. I guess that's the unique selling point compared to just capturing it from outside in.
Yeah, I would definitely say that you have that data set available. So you can also run models, train models, and add that to either the material you're creating or maybe even in the future towards a surgical robotics platform.
For the very fine movements, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
You can do it in real time. That's also a big difference.
Yeah, that's true.
It's both. Are there any more questions? Otherwise, we will manage to close in time for other appointments. Maarten, a very big thanks. I think you have told us a wonderful story, not only about innovation and technology, but also about how the whole adventure of starting a company in this very complex, challenging field. I really have enjoyed it very, very much, and thank you very much.
Yeah, I liked giving this presentation. It was a lot of fun to prepare and to dive into the archives of Manus and look up old footage. So thank you for the opportunity. And
it was really, really good.
Thank you very much, Maarten. I think you have a wonderful presentation and you can do a couple of reruns of it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Good.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.